comic books made more sense. You know it is fictitious without pretense.
Alright, today I'm going to take a look at Battlestar Galactica, the Marvel Comics from 1978 to 1979. Not a long-running series, but it actually outlasted the show by a little bit. Really awesome series. They had adapted some of the episodes from the beginning of the series for the first 5 issues, and then after that, supposedly due to rights disputes, they couldn't adapt the other episodes, but that's okay because they could carry on with their own thing, which I always find more interesting. So here's my stack of the entire run of Battlestar Galactica, and I'll go through them cover by cover. Let's start off with Battlestar Galactica first collector's item issue. Even back then, they're beating their chest about how something's a collector's item if it's issue 1. So this adapts the first episode of Battlestar Galactica, which came out in 1978, capitalizing on Star Wars, of course. This is not to be confused with the reboot, which was much more serious and had little to do with the original, but was still good in its own right. So this is written by Roger McKenzie, with art by Ernie Colon, and the cover is by Dave Cockrum and Bob McLeod. Here's issue 2, Exodus, and here you see the bad guy. So issue 2 is written by Roger McKenzie again, with art by Ernie Colon, and the cover is by Jeff Acklin and Bob McLeod. Issue 3, I love the starburst there. Issue 3, DEATHTRAP. This is awesome. The CYLON has his gun on the kid, and you see the little dog. It was played by a monkey in the actual TV series. This is written by Roger McKenzie again, with art by Ernie Colon, and the cover is by Rudy Nebres. Issue 4, this is a great cover. Actually, I found this one when I was a kid on the ground at Zeller's. They had these old comics and people were strewing them all over the ground and stuff. This still says it's based on the Lost Planet of the Gods, Part 1 and 2. So issue 4 is written by Roger McKenzie, adapted, of course, from the show. Art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson, and they also did the cover. Here's issue 5. This is the last adaptation of the show, a direct adaptation of an episode before they carry on with their own thing. So issue 5 was written by Roger McKenzie, and art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson, and they also did the cover. I always love the CYLON battleships. They look cool. They look like flying saucers. The toys for those are awesome too. So here's issue 6, telling their own stories now. Issue 6 was written by Roger McKenzie, with art by Rich Buckler and Klaus Janson, and he also did the cover. Issue 7, Battlestar Galactica. No, that blast destroyed the memory machine's controls. Commander Adama is trapped inside forever. Dun dun dun. So this was written by Roger McKenzie, with art by Rich Buckler and Klaus Janson, and they also did the cover. Issue 8, Last Stand. Issue 8 was written by Bill Mantlo, and the art was Sal Buscema and Klaus Janson, and the cover is Rich Buckler with inks by Klaus Janson. You can see them right here. Issue 8, Space Mimic. Issue 9. What am I saying? Issue 9, Space Mimic. Written by Bill Mantlo, with art by Sal Buscema and Klaus Janson. And the cover is Pat Broderick with Terry Austin inking. Here's issue 10, This planet hungers. This is a cool cover. Issue 10 was written by Tom DeFalco, with interior art by Pat Broderick, with inks by Eduardo Barrado and Pablo Marcos. And the cover is by Pat Broderick with inks by Terry Broderick. Issue 11. Well, boys, looks like I win. Wrong, Starbuck, you lose. I guess it's on that space bar that they have in the Battlestar Galactica in the 70s show. This is written by Roger McKenzie and Walt Simonson. They're both credited. Art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson, and they also did the cover. Well, let me refresh this pile. Issue 12. Issue 12 was written by Roger McKenzie and Walt Simonson, both credited once again. Art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson. They also did the cover. It's a cool cover, too. Lots of glass and stuff. Issue 13. Written by Roger McKenzie and Walt Simonson. Art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson, and the art is by Walt Simonson, which I think he probably inked it himself because he's the only one credited with the cover. Issue 14. Written by Roger McKenzie. Art by Jim Mooney and Klaus Janson. And the cover is by Walt Simonson. You can see here the kid with that robot dog thing played by a monkey in the in the show. No use looking for that runaway kid in here. He's got more sense than to come anywhere near that deadly radiation. No, he doesn't. Issue 15. Ship of Crawling Death. It's written by Roger McKenzie and Walt Simonson. Art by Walt Simonson. Inks by Klaus Janson. And the cover is Walt Simonson, credited like solo once again. I love this cover. CYLON Mark III. There is no comparison. I love that. Issue 16 was written by Roger McKenzie and Walt Simonson yet again. Art by Walt Simonson and with inks by Bob Layton. Covers by Walt Simonson. Issue 17, the escaped animal is heading toward Launch Bay Alpha. But there is no cause for alarm, and here he is destroying guys. Issue 17 was written by Stephen Grant and Walt Simonson. Art is by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson. The cover is by Bill Sienkiewicz and Klaus Janson on inks. Issue 18. Written by Stephen Grant and Walt Simonson. Art by Sal Buscema and Klaus Janson. The cover is Michael Golden, who's got a solo credit on the cover, so he must have inked it as well. Battle for the Forbidden Fruit. It's a great cover, great creatures. Issue 19. This Marvel comic could be worth $2,500 to you. I love the ones that had the Toys R Us thing as well. It's like it wasn't even applicable in most markets it was sold in. Issue 19 was written by Walt Simonson. Art by Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson, and cover by Walt Simonson, so it's almost a one-man show. Not that you missed him, but Starbuck is back. Here's a Toys R Us one. Win a Toys R Us shopping spree. Issue 20. This is Starbuck, Galactic Warrior. This is Uriel, Empress of Savage World. In a vacuum of space, they must duel to the death. Issue 20. was written by Walt Simonson, with art by Walt Simonson, inks by Klaus Janson, and cover by Walt Simonson. It's the Walt Simonson show yet again. Issue 21. Apollo's most desperate adventure to slay a monster to destroy a world. Issue 21 was written by Steve Grant and Walt Simonson, art by Brent Anderson, and inks by Klaus Janson, cover by the same team. Issue 22, Can This Be a Love Story? This is a cool cover too, with 2 different scenes and 1 common here. 22 was written by Steve Grant and Walt Simonson, art by Brent Anderson and Klaus Janson, and a cover is by Brent Anderson and Klaus Janson again. And last issue, issue 23. Last issue, a collector's item. There being that collector's item drum again. Bring On the Pirates. 23 was written by Walt Simonson, with art by Walt Simonson and inks by Klaus Janson, and the covers by Walt Simonson. As far as I've been able to tell, there were no annuals for Battlestar Galactica. Peculiar, I guess. Maybe it's because it got snuffed out fairly shortly, following the show, right? But I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane and looking at old Battlestar Galactica comics. Take care.